Mr. Kleinsmith, I guess that's his name. He was the FBI lawyer who messed with the FISA warrants to make it seem like Carter Page was a bad guy when in fact he was a patriot. First up, though, is the big news this week. I guess the big news this week is the victory in Virginia for Governor-elect Youngkin. But the more important legal news is the filing of an indictment, the arrest of a man and his federal indictment by John Durham, who's special counsel. And the man's name is Igor Danchenkoo. He's a foreign national. He's a Russian. He lives here in the United States. And he was arrested the other day. And he was arrested for lying to the FBI about the nature of the work and who he was talking to and how he came about information that was used in the Steele dossier to smear Trump. Danchenko is Hillary's guy. How is he Hillary's guy? He worked for Christopher Steele and helped create the so-called dossier. And the report, or I should say the indictment, which is here, and I encourage you to review it, goes through quite deliberately how Danchenko would get a snippet of information and muck it up or change it or make it false. For instance, his key contact, of course, was a Hillary Clinton supporter, a volunteer at her campaign, previously had been an official member of her earlier campaigns, and he also worked for the Russians. So you had an American working for the Russians, working with a Russian, who's working for a British guy, who's working for the Clinton operation, Fusion GPS, who's working for Clinton's campaign and the Democratic National Committee. And by the way, Christopher Steele is also being paid by the FBI at the same time. That's the way it worked in Obama land. And he would, for instance, get information and say about well, for instance, he went to Moscow. He went to Moscow with this Clinton buddy, crony, and they went and visited the Moscow hotel. And they learned that Donald Trump had once visited that hotel. So what Danchenko did was he took that factoid and added the salacious sex allegations, falsely attaching it to that factoid. He also denied speaking, more or less, to this Clinton operative, volunteer, who supposedly said that, oh, Hillary didn't know anything about what I was doing. But of course, it really didn't matter since she was paying Danchenko. And he denied repeatedly to the FBI, according to this indictment, that he talked to this Clinton operative about the dossier. And what Durham says in the indictment is, look, if the FBI had known this, of course they should have known it, they would have been able, if they had known that this Clinton operative was indeed a source for this Russian, they would have been able to kind of figure out more quickly whether this dossier was valid or not. And of course, Durham once again, or further confirmed that he was unable to confirm pretty much anything of importance in the dossier, which was a smear operation against President Trump. So it's a big deal in the sense that the author of the dossier, or one of the key guys who provided information allegedly about the dossier, was a Russian, and Mr. Durham's indictment strongly suggests he's a Russian agent, although he doesn't come out and say it. And B, it was a lie. So you've got official confirmation through this indictment, at least, it's the position of the United States government that the dossier's a big lie. And it's a lie generated by the Clinton campaign, the Democratic National Committee. Now recall, Mr. Sussman, who is Hillary Clinton's campaign lawyer, also was indicted for lying to the FBI. And then you had the lawyer whose name Mr. Kleinsmith, I guess that's his name. He was the FBI lawyer who messed with the FISA warrants to make it seem like Carter Page was a bad guy when in fact he was a patriot. And he pled guilty, got no jail time, or I don't think any notable jail time as I recall. And so this material also that Danchenko is being indicted over, or at least the dossier, that he manufactured out of whole cloth, it looks like, more or less, essentially just ended up directly in the FISA warrants that were used on to spy on Carter Page and the Trump team generally. So this whole spy operation was the result of a big lie orchestrated by the Clinton operation. And what I would highlight is it's not just the Clinton operation. The FBI knew about Danchenko's lack of credibility 4 years ago, 2017. I mean, they were questioning, he should have been indicted 4 years ago. But the FBI at the time was, I guess it was run at one point by Comey, and then by McCabe, and then by Wray. They were just desperate to get Trump. So they weren't going to go after and blow up the dossier. Mueller wasn't going to blow up his dossier by highlighting the fact that it was a big lie, and they knew it was, and there were crimes committed in the investigation of it by the liars in the Clinton operation. They weren't going to blow the whistle on that. So the crime is, in my view, the crime is even worse than what the indictment's about, because the indictment just focuses on the guy, Igor Danchenkoo. It doesn't focus on those who knew he was lying and yet pretended what he said was true. So that, to me, is the big question. Is Durham going to go after people in the FBI and elsewhere who ran with this despite knowing it was true? And I was on Fox today, and I made the point. I said, you know, look, in politics, you say things about your opponent, and oftentimes it's lies. That's what happens in politics, and you kind of understand it. It's not appropriate, it's not right, but that you understand. But when you get the FBI involved, and you knowingly say these lies to the FBI, there's the problem, and that was Danchenko's problem. But on the other hand, if I'm Danchenko, I'd be like, well, you know, or Christopher Steele, assuming that he gets, I don't know if he'll get indicted eventually on this. You know, and I'm the defense attorney. I'm going to say, oh, well, I'm lying to the FBI. The FBI, they all knew what I was doing. They're my co-conspirators. And that's the dirty little secret to the Durham investigation, is that the FBI at the time was also paying Christopher Steele in 2016, who was paying Danchenko to make up the lies. And they all knew Steele was a bad guy. They fired him as an informant, yet they tried to bring him back in. And the reason the FBI was even talking about Danchenko and trying to run the dossier down was because they were desperate to get Trump. So, you know, the crimes involved in the dossier, I think, are readily apparent. And the other big deal here, which is Durham is yet to touch, and I hope he does, is that the other part of the crime is that the FBI and government officials knew there were lies and continued to maliciously prosecute and target Trump anyway and spy on him anyway, and people close to him like Carter Page. So that's the story. Now the question I have is, when is Hillary Clinton going to be questioned by Durham? How many Hillary Clinton campaign operatives have to be indicted if one of her top lawyers, her campaign's top lawyers, was indicted? Danchenko, I guess, you know, 2 rungs away from her, 2 or 3 rungs away from her. What did she know, and when did she know about the dossier? Huh? Has Durham asked her that? You know, last time I checked congressional testimony on this issue, I think Glenn Simpson, who runs Fusion GPS, was being questioned on what he told the campaign or whatever about the dossier. And I think what he was told Hillary Clinton about that, and he refused to say. So that, to me, is a key question. Why hasn't Hillary Clinton been questioned? I'm assuming she hasn't been questioned. And Durham should take those next steps. So this is just another step forward in highlighting the criminal campaign against Trump. And it highlights how it was this unholy alliance between corrupt FBI officials and investigators, the corrupt Justice Department, the corrupt Mueller operation, and Hillary Clinton's operatives at Fusion GPS. We already have an indictment of the top campaign lawyer, or one of two of the top campaign lawyers at the firm that hired Fusion GPS. We have the key source, the key fiction writer for the dossier indicted for lying to the FBI about where he was getting the details and who he was talking to about the dossier allegations, which were obviously fraudulent. So what next? What about Hillary? What about those who signed on to the FISA warrants? Extraordinary FISA warrants targeting an incoming president and then the president of the United States. Extraordinary. So that's what happened. And just so you know, Judicial Watch has uncovered much of what we know about the corruption related to the FISA warrants. You know, Nunes got the ball rolling on this. Devin Nunes, who was he was chairman of the Intelligence Committee then. Now he's the ranking member. But Judicial Watch uncovered that Steele was being paid by the FBI. He met with the FBI 13 times in 2016. 11 of those times he was paid. We uncovered how Bruce Orr, remember Bruce Orr and Nellie Orr over at the Justice Department, told the FBI that, you know, look, they had an axe to grind against Hillary. They were her political opponents, or her political supporters. Excuse me, the exact opposite. They had an axe to grind against Trump. They supported Hillary Clinton, which further undermined their credibility. And stuff wasn't checking out. We have the documents showing the stuff wasn't checking out. And plus, we got the FISA warrants declassified. First time in the history of man it's ever happened. So in many ways, Durham is like following our lead. 4 years too late in many ways. Is it a day late and $1 short? I would suggest it is in some respects, to be a little negative here. Because, you know, they hamstrung the Trump presidency. They protected Hillary Clinton from being prosecuted for her corruption. They went after Trump with an abusive impeachment as part of this conspiracy against him. And frankly, the second impeachment was about the first one as well, despite them pretending to be about January 6th. It was just another pretext to harass Trump. And it hasn't stopped. He's still being harassed by prosecutors, in my view. And having his rights violated 6 ways to Sunday. I'll say it once, and I'll say it again. Donald J. Trump is a crime victim. And this indictment proves it. So Judicial Watch has much litigation still going on these issues. And as I said, Durham is following our lead. So let's hope more comes because it can't come soon enough.
Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel to catch all the latest news from Judicial Watch.